Hello friends, welcome to another episode of the Martius podcast. Martius is my fantasy adventure audio drama about humans and fairies that I am currently in the process of developing. Last episode was about the kingdom Harmonia, one of the two main kingdoms in Martius. That episode will be linked down below in the description as well as in the podcast playlist. Today's episode is going to be the first of several where I talk about the people of Harmonia. And since last episode was about Harmonia as a kingdom, I felt that it was only appropriate to start with the Harmonian royal family, which is also why I'm wearing my little tiara. Originally, I was going to wear a dress too, but it is too hot. So this is as much effort to be on theme that I'm going to put in for this episode. But so without further ado, let's get into it. Before we start talking about the Harmonian royal family, I first wanted to quickly mention a small little detail that I forgot to touch on in the last episode. It's pretty inconsequential, but it does still have to do with the general world building, so I still wanted to mention it anyway, and it is in regards to Harmonia's weather. So Harmonia's weather tends to be generally colder due to its proximity to the barrier that separates the western and eastern hemispheres of Renea, and this is because this barrier is essentially this gigantic mountain range that runs all around Renea. Thus, Harmonia is known for its very cold winters and its generally cool summers. But yeah, that's all I wanted to touch on with that. And now on to a quick history of the Harmonian royal family. Starting with Queen Abigail and King Benedict, the founders of Harmonia. As I said in the last episode, not much is known about Abigail and Benedict's origins, though it is speculated that the both of them came from nobility. Aside from establishing Harmonia, Abigail and Benedict are most well known for declaring Harmonia as a safe haven for fairies during the age of fairy hunters. Abigail is also known for establishing the Harmonian Hospital, and Benedict is known for establishing the Harmonian military system, which we will be discussing more in the next episode. The Harmonian military base was actually originally named after Benedict, but Benedict rejected the name because he felt that it was unfair to have the base named after him when the hospital wasn't named after Abigail. So then it was also suggested that the hospital be named after Abigail, but Abigail also rejected this notion because she wanted the hospital to be recognized as Harmonia's achievement and not hers alone. Abigail and Benedict ruled for 35 years. They had one son, Prince Ferdinand, and two daughters, Princess Felicity and Princess Fleur. Prince Ferdinand succeeded the throne and married Lady Beatrice Irvine. Felicity and Fleur acted as advisors to their brother. Together, the siblings established the first Harmonian Council, and it was only made up of 9 members: Ferdinand, Beatrice, Felicity, Fleur, and Ferdinand hand-selected the remaining 5. Ferdinand is best remembered for working with the Harmonian Council to formally establish Harmonia's districts that we talked about in the last episode, establishing trading with other kingdoms and villages, and working to strengthen human-fairy relationships. And Beatrice is best known for having established the first Harmonian school. Together, they ruled for another 35 years. They had one daughter, Princess Eloise, and one son, Prince Edward. Princess Eloise succeeded the throne and married Major Oscar Beaumont. Her brother Edward also joined the military. Eloise is most well known for revising the Harmonian education system into how it exists today. Essentially, children are enrolled in school from ages 5 to 13, where they receive a general education covering a variety of subjects and professions, and then after graduating, they can either enroll in military training or choose an artisan trade apprenticeship or another non-artisan career path. Eloise and Oscar also expanded the Harmonian Council, establishing the local councils throughout the Harmonian districts. The local councils typically have 3 to 5 representatives that meet with the larger Harmonian Council. Council members are generally people who have either left an apprenticeship or military training. Some are from noble families who have been privately tutored for the position since childhood. And going back to Eloise and Oscar, they had one daughter, Princess Amelia, who succeeded them after having ruled for 32 years. We're going to skip ahead a couple of generations to talk about the members of the royal family that you really need to know about, and that is Queen Scarlett and King David. Scarlett Luna Magnus is the second child of King Ferdinand III and Queen Luna. She grew up with her older brother, Prince Philip, and Philip's best friend, James de Clare. As an orphan, James was basically like absorbed into the royal family. Philip was originally the crown prince of Harmonia, but after he met an untimely death when he was just 20 years old, Scarlett was then trained to become queen in his place. Philip died when Scarlett was 13, but her parents remained on the throne until it was deemed appropriate for her to succeed them. During those transitional years, James, who was quickly rising through the ranks of the military, acted as Scarlett's personal bodyguard and closest confidant. Scarlett was crowned queen when she was 18, making her the youngest Harmonian queen at the time of her coronation. This isn't the first time that a younger royal sibling has succeeded the throne as opposed to the oldest child, but it is the first time that the reason being so was the death of the oldest child. One of the first things that Scarlett did as queen was to rename the artisan district in Philip's honor, since that was where, besides the castle, that Philip spent the most time throughout his life. He always had such an appreciation for all the various artisan trades. Throughout her reign, Scarlett has done a lot of work to improve the Harmonian medical system, as well as further strengthen human-fairy relationships with the neighboring villages in collaboration with Madame Rosemary Hyacinth. Several years into her rule as queen, small but significant skirmishes begin happening between Harmonia and Martius, with the Martius military making moves towards Harmonia's western front. So the Martius military was targeting several of the villages that Harmonia was allied with, never escalating into full-blown assaults, but as their intimidation and their threats of the villagers became more intense, Harmonia had no choice but to respond by moving their forces out west. Essentially, they were trying to pressure these smaller villages to turn against Harmonia, to cut ties with Harmonia, for seemingly no reason. There was a reason. I can't tell you the reason, but there was a because Martius, they're always doing some things. They always got plans. They always doing some things. But so over the next year, as the conflict escalated, several attempts were made on Scarlett's life. None were successful, as the Harmonian military had been strengthened exponentially under James as he became commander. But after enough attempts, it was eventually determined that Martius was responsible, and Harmonia declared war. Shortly after, Martius invaded Harmonia. The Harmonian-Martius War is a pivotal event in both Harmonian and Martius history, not to mention the story at large. It will have its own episode. But so after the war, Scarlett's main priority was reconstruction. She provided financial relief for the families who had lost loved ones in the war. She and Madame Rosemary expanded the hospital because there were a lot of injured in the aftermath of the war. Scarlett also took measures to ensure that another invasion wouldn't happen again, namely through the construction of the evacuation tunnels that run under the kingdom and increasing security of the gates. In the following years, Scarlett shifted her focus to establishing stronger alliances with other kingdoms, namely Sapentay and Presidium. Not only was Scarlett able to secure alliances with these kingdoms, she was also courted by Prince David of Presidium, the second son of King Eros and King Dacre. The details of Scarlett and David's love story are for another day, but after a few years of courting, Scarlett and David were married and David became king. Timeline-wise, the Harmonian-Martius War occurred 9 years prior to the start of the Mission of Martius story, and Scarlett and David were married 5 years before the start of the story. I'm also going to insert some reference pictures for Scarlett and David so that you can get an idea of what they look like. Scarlett has black hair that is slightly wavy and tucked behind her ears. She has dark brown eyes and she has brown skin. She is South Asian, not by Renean metrics, but if Mission of Martius took place in the real world, she would be South Asian, and she's 5'5". She wears a red ball gown and a ruby crown, and you can't see them under the dress, but I imagine her to be wearing black shoes that have a slight heel to them. I also imagine that Scarlett's gown has more gold details than what the references show. David has curly black hair, dark brown eyes, and brown skin. He's also South Asian, not, again, by Renean metrics, but if Mission of Martius took place in the real world, he would be South Asian. He also has a beard and is 5'9". From the references, I imagine David to be wearing this sort of red tunic. I'm not really sure exactly, like this red top, like how the reference is on the left, whatever you want to call that. But I imagine it to look a little bit more like in that same style, but a little bit more regal, like the one on the right. No cape or cloak. He wears brown pants and some very tall black boots, and he also wears a ruby crown like Scarlett. Scarlett cares very deeply about her people and the people of Renea at large. This tends to put her at odds with some of the members in the Harmonian Council because she's always trying to find the balance between putting her people first while also wanting to help the people in Renea that may need Harmonia's help. Scarlett is a more minor character in the beginning, but she gets a bigger role over time. And something I'm really excited for you guys to see with her is the special bonds that she has with Bianca and Cassandra throughout the story. David is also a pretty small character, but I think that he's a really good support for Scarlett. He's a guy who knows what he wants when it comes to his personal life and also when it comes to his subjects, and is strong in his convictions and knows when to push for what he wants and also when to back off, which is something that Scarlett particularly likes about him. All right, now that we are caught up on the royal family, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Harmonian Castle and the Harmonian Council, starting with the castle. As I mentioned in the last episode, the castle is located at the center of Harmonia. It is home to Queen Scarlett and King David. Some of the royal family's rooms, like from the previous generations, have been preserved. Others have become inhabited by the current members of the royal family and the castle staff. For example, Abigail and Benedict's room has been maintained for several hundred years since their reign. It's kind of like this very historical artifact within the castle. And Philip's room has also been preserved per Scarlett's request. Scarlett and David have a room. Scarlett's parents have a room. Though Scarlett's parents don't permanently reside in Harmonia, they mostly travel across Renea, but they stay in the castle when they do visit home. The castle staff consists of the cleaning staff, the cooks, Scarlett's ladies in waiting. There's also the soldiers who guard the castle, etc., etc. The castle is also where the larger Harmonian Council assembles. The current Harmonian Council has 70 members, which includes Scarlett, David, and the representatives from the local councils. Other members of the council include people that Scarlett has selected, and there are also people who are still there from when Scarlett's parents were in power. The council votes on every issue that concerns Harmonia, the military, the economy, education, relationships with other kingdoms and villages, etc., etc. And while Scarlett and David get the final say in the decisions they make, they generally try to listen to and adhere the word of the council. All right, that is all I have for today's episode of the Mission and Martius podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. The next episode is coming out on August 14th, and it will be about the Harmonian military. If you guys have any questions about Mission and Martius in any capacity, you can leave them down below in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. Obviously, if they may involve spoilers, I will just tell you that I can't really talk about it, but I will do my best to generally answer any questions that you guys have. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening to the Mission and Martius podcast, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.